Today's Cowboys Report is sponsored by Kinzuri, the ultimate height hack with height-boosting shoes. You guys can get 15% off your Kinzuri order on top of the up to 30% deal at kinzuri.com/chat. But we begin today's show with the latest on Zack Martin. The holdout threat from Martin continues as the Cowboys team captain, one of their team captains, did not take the team's flight from Dallas to Oxnard today. Now, the flight is not mandatory. There are, of course, plenty of ways to get out to California from Dallas, plenty of flights available, but it is at least significant that Martin did not take the freely available team-chartered flight following the report last week that he was considering holding out from the Cowboys because he is unhappy with his contract. Martin has until tomorrow to report to the Cowboys. It is not officially nor technically a holdout until tomorrow. We'll know then whether or not Martin took his own travel plan out to Oxnard, but for now, the threat of a holdout is very plausible. Martin right now is fairly lowly ranked among the highest paid guards in the NFL. He's 8th at $14 million per year behind guys like Chris Lindstrom, Quentin Nelson. He's almost $7 million behind the highest paid guards in the NFL, and that's a big factor in the current status of his unhappiness with the Cowboys organization. Martin has 2 years remaining on his contract, plus some dead money void years, some fake years on his deal. $11 million cap hit this year, $23.34 million cap charge next year. There's an additional $10 million dead cap hit in 2025. He's not making that much in cash, $13.5, $14 million. Again, relatively speaking, that's not in the top five, which is something Zack Martin is accustomed to. A, being a top five highest paid guard / the highest paid guard, and being a top five guard in terms of play in the NFL. 9 seasons to Dallas Cowboys. He's had 6 All-Pro campaigns. He didn't play as well last season. That is something very much worth remembering and reminding, that his 73.3 overall grade, I think done in part by the lesser play when playing with Tyron Smith and Terence Steele. Didn't quite have the same one-to-one impact. Smith wasn't as good. That's a fair factor. Even in a down year for Zack Martin, he still had a top 10 graded season or close to it among all NFL guards. Frankly, the biggest concern I think you might have with Martin is that, hey, he turns 33 this year and in November. How many more years does he have, and are you paying a premium for a player who might not be the same, even though he is a future Hall of Famer and still very good and still your best offensive lineman, maybe not the same peak, best lineman in the entire NFL he was earlier in his career. So prediction time. We'll spend some more on Zack Martin's status here, but will he hold out from training camp? Not on the team flight. We'll know for certain in about 24 hours. Y for yes, N for no. Go vote at the pinned comment of today's show, especially if the ad break comes here on YouTube. Now, there's another third option beyond reporting and, holding out, is the holding in situation. What Martin can do is report to Cowboys training camp and avoid fines, and then simply not practice due to an injury. We've seen this time and time again across the NFL. You don't want to risk getting hurt. You've got maybe it's the soft tissue injury that Martin said he was dealing with at Cowboys OTAs in minicamp. That kind of kernel was planted as a possibility for the Cowboys being an issue there. So Martin, we'll see what happens tomorrow if he reports or not. Maybe he took his own way. Maybe he just wants to scare the Cowboys into caving by not being on a team charter. But this story not going away, at least for a little bit. Today's Cowboys Report is presented by Kinzuri. Fellas, have you ever wished you were a little bit taller? Maybe you matched on Tinder or whatever the kids are using these days for dating apps, but a profile says you got to be over 6 feet. Maybe your date wants to wear heels, but she can't because that would make her taller than you. We got Short Kings covered with today's sponsor, Kinzuri. Kinzuri makes shoes that can add up to 2.8 inches to your height without anyone knowing. Kinzuri is not only height boosting, but also stylish and comfortable. They are not grandpa's Velcro shoes, but rather fashionable shoes that can receive compliments even without the height increase. The height insoles are built into the shoes, making it the ultimate height hack. For a limited time, you guys get an extra 15% off your order at kinzuri.com/chat. The site is already, by the way, 30% off. With our link, you get an extra 15%. That is 45% off your entire order. To support our show, and check them out at conzuri.com/chat. Life is short, but you guys don't have to be. Level up the playing field, update that dating profile to 6 foot, and use Kinzuri, an absolute game changer when it comes to your dating life. That link, folks, is in the comment section, and it's in the description of today's show. It's kinzuri.com/chat. Let's talk trade rumors now. Could Dallas trade away a defensive lineman? That was kind of alluded to in a recent article. We'll break down the full roster projection to an extent. We'll do some surprise cut candidates from Todd Archer. But he did include this line that I thought was really interesting and worth discussing more in depth. He writes as part of his build-up to his roster projection, depth is always an issue, but the Cowboys have a plethora of defensive linemen and could use some of them as trade bait, mentioning Dante Fowler and Neville Gallimore to fill gaps or gain future picks. Let's break down these two players then. Dante Fowler was re-signed this offseason on a 1-year, $3 million deal, only $1 million of which was guaranteed. The Cowboys could choose to move on from Fowler if they wanted and or needed to, whether it's because, hey, there's excess depth along the defensive line, there's too many pieces there, they're going to trade him away, maybe one of your young guys end up emerging. Fowler last year for overall did make a nice impact. I think if I had told you this was his stat line, 7 TFLs, 6 sacks, 2 fumbles, you would have went, that's an awesome signing. And in the end, it was a positive signing, to be clear. He also did not make the same impact in the back half of the season and didn't play that much against the 49ers. The Cowboys view Fowler as a rotational pass rusher. I don't think they love him against the run. Sam Williams is somebody I want to get more playing time in that exact role. You have Micah Parsons. You have Tank Lawrence. You have Dorrance Armstrong. What happens if someone like, I don't know, a Tyus Wheat ends up emerging as a piece for this Cowboys team, or Ben Bannigue finally lives up to his, level of expectations and height from that perspective? If there is another piece at edge rusher, I could see a scenario in which the Cowboys consider trading away Dante Fowler. I wouldn't be surprised in general if a trade, maybe it's more of a player for player, we'll trade you our depth for your depth, does go down for the Cowboys. So what do you think ends up happening? Will the Cowboys make another trade? 1 for yes, they will. 0 for no, they will not. Go ahead and vote for me in the comment section right now. Neville Gallimore was the other player mentioned in that Archer piece. And this one, he's also just straight up on the roster bubble because there's $2.74 million in savings, which would also potentially negatively impact the Cowboys' chances of trading him because that's a decent amount of money for a player who, simply put, has not lived up to expectations in Dallas. The tackles went up this year, 33. The TFLs have dropped every season. The sacks have been fairly steady. The lack of splash impact has been very real for Neville Gallimore and should raise some concerns as he fights to make the roster with guys like, Osa Odigizua, Mozzie Smith, Chauncey Golston, Isaac Alarcon, Jonathan Hankins, Junior Fehoko as well. There are a lot of pieces on this Dallas Cowboys team. Fehoko is going to play some inside-outside stuff. I'm very curious to see how this Cowboys defensive line ends up working out. I don't know, though, if Gallimore ends up making this team. Training camp will be massive for him. And training camp has kind of begun with players flying out from Dallas to Oxnard today. Other teams have fully begun camp, but the training camp cycle, at least, with stuff to actually discuss that's related to actual football is going on, and we're going to have you guys covered. Hit that sub button right now for more free Cowboys videos with everything going on around training camp, the preseason, and more. Speaking of, we'll go rapid fire here. Some Cowboys training camp preview to round out today's show. Number one thing to watch for me, early on at least, who's practicing, who is not. We'll get to Terence Steele more in depth. Sounds like he should be good to go. Jordan Lewis might begin the year on the PUP list. We'll have to wait and see what happens with Tony Pollard. He should be fine. Is Nashawn Wright healthy? Is Zack Martin out there? Who's playing? Who's not? And where is Terence Steele playing, by the way? I would hope he's at right tackle. I think he is best there, and I think he is a better player at this point than Tyron Smith. Which is not a thought I would have said this time last year. The report from Archer, again, Todd Archer helping us out today, is that he is expected to not be on the PUP list to begin training camp, meaning he's going to be out there in some capacity right away. He can pass physical. That is a really good sign for his knee rehab from his torn ACL suffered late last season. All accounts, things have been going really well for the rehab. If that is true, if Steele does not begin the year on the PUP list, it's a really good sign for how confident the Cowboys are in his recovery. Number 3, how about the newcomers in general? Brandon Cooks, Stephon Gilmore. We'll get to the rookies later on here, I'm sure at some point in the future on a video. But the newcomers, how are they impacting overall? Which you were close last year. I think you were the 5th best team in the NFL. You got to be the 4th best team or better. Number 4, the roster battles, which I'm very curious to see how this all plays out from that perspective in terms of there's a lot of different spots that I think are up for grabs right now. Various depth spots, the starting tight end position, left guard, wide receivers from, wide receiver 4 to wide receiver 5, 6 even, nose guard, edge, the linebackers, and kicker, by the way. There's a lot going on that won't be sorted out in Oxnard's camp, might even be until you get back to Cowboys camp in Frisco, etc. So that's going to be something worth monitoring. And I think, much like last year, we will be acutely tuned into the kicker battle and how they are doing at a spot that does challenge you with the way that the wind can cause some issues sometimes at Oxnard's camp. There can be some tricky bits there. So that will be worth focusing on. We saw what happened last year. Jonathan Garibay he couldn't handle it. Hopefully the 2 guys that are in camp right now, or else you got to go find somebody else again. TV for Tristan Vizcaino, BA for Brandon Aubrey, or O for other. Who ends up winning that kicker job? Go vote for me in the comment section. Number 5, McCarthy versus Quinn. What I want to see at Cowboys camp is I want to see some at least 7-on-7 or ideally 11-on-11, no tackling, whatever, and let Mike McCarthy call the plays against Dan Quinn. Let Dan Quinn call the plays, the ones versus the ones. If we're being honest and objective, this is one of the best defenses the Cowboys will play all year. And frankly, this is one of the better offenses and quarterbacks the defense will play all year. So find a way to let those 2 have the iron sharpen irons mindset, I think will lead to better results for the Cowboys in the games that actually matter.